Hi, this is Ken Sagos. I play Kincaid in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 and 4 on the Great Horror Squad podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Horror Squad podcast. This is episode number 263, where tonight we are going to be reviewing Wes Craven's New Nightmare. We are Toddless tonight, unfortunately, so you're just going to be stuck with me, Joe, hosting, and everyone's favorite podcast host, Steve. Steve, what's up, man?
Well, top three maybe, but probably not favorite. I'm doing good. We just had a hangout, our movie club hangout with the listeners over on Discord. And let me tell you, we had a lot of fun. We watched The Greasy Strangler, which of course is a favorite here on the podcast, one we all really love. The reaction was mixed, which is expected because it's really not for everyone. But we had a ton of fun. Like it just got crazy by the end there. And thank you everyone who came by. And, next month we'll do it again as we do every month. So join our Discord. But other than that, not much going on. I gotta say, it's snowing again. Like I don't know where to put my snow anymore. The snowbank where I shovel is over my head. It's over 6 feet tall, and it's just like, what do I do? It's crazy. It's got to stop.
That's awful. We've been, knock on wood, we've been fairly lucky here so far this season. We've only gotten maybe like a foot total for the year, so I will take that. It's actually funny. We're like a year removed from a storm where it dropped like 3 feet on us last year, so that was fucking terrible. But you just gotta power through. It's the winter. Do you guys have a theme for next month, Steve, for the movie club? Have you guys come up with anything?
So I don't know. I might change it up because it's gotten more complicated now that we're watching it live, because not every movie you're able to. It'll block you streaming that movie, so you only hear it, not see it. And it's just like, not only do I have to check if it's available, I have to check if it's working. It's just a whole thing. So I think from now on, we're just going to pick it the night of. So I'm going to show my kind of app on screen, and people can suggest movies and stuff like that, which is how we picked Night of Something Strange, what we reviewed last week, and turned out super good. So I think that'll be the way to go from now on. But I did get a request to watch something serious this time, because we watched Night of Something Strange, Rectuma, and The Greasy Strangler so far. So someone asked me, can we do like a serious horror movie? So that'll probably be I guess somewhat of the theme for next month, is something more along the lines of something scary, I guess, or maybe more of a slasher, but not a just crazy sexual, deviant escapade.
Maybe something Craven to, check off another one for our Wes Craven retrospective that's going to be coming up later in the year, which I'm very excited about. I've already started tackling into it, and there's a lot of Craven stuff I haven't seen, so it's going to be awesome. And we're going to be doing that probably in the summer, so stay tuned. But if you aren't familiar with our retrospective series, definitely go back and listen to our Stuart Gordon one. That's one of my favorite episodes we ever did, honestly. Just because I got to see so many Stuart Gordon films that I'd never seen before, which was awesome. So I really enjoy these retrospectives, and we're definitely going to be doing more in the future.
Yeah, I saw them all now. The Stuart Gordon films. It's a nice 100% completion on Letterboxd, and I'm looking to do the same with Craven. Now, of course, we're going to talk about just the horror ones on this show, and that's what I watch first. But by the end, he doesn't have that many non-horror ones. I'm probably going to end up checking it out if I can find them, because why not? It's crazy to think that Wes Craven's doing like romantic films and stuff like that, like Becky Jatem and stuff like that. So I'm very curious as to what those look like, and I'll definitely watch those as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. I saw Music of the Heart like years and years ago. I don't remember much about it. I just mainly remember the NSYNC song that came out of it with Gloria Estefan. They did like a duet for the soundtrack, and it was on fucking TRL all the time. So, all right, Steve, so you want to get into some horror news?
Let's do it.
All right, awesome. So once again, if you ever have horror news for us, we do have a horror news channel over on our Discord. So, if you'd like me to talk about any horror news that I might not have, just throw it in there and I'll be sure to check it out. First bit of news here I want to talk about is a little update on Texas Frightmare Weekend. Of course, that is going to be we're calling it the official Horror Squad podcast meetup. The whole squad is planning to be there, as well as a lot of our listeners. I think we're up to like almost 15 total right now. So it's going to be a really, really great time. I just want to mention a few. They're added like a lot of new photo ops recently that are going to be really awesome for the people that are going to be attending. The coolest, I think, that they just announced is they're doing a Thing cast reunion, and they're doing a photo op where they're replicating the dog kennel, where they're going to have like the Norris spider head in it and like the fucking dog monster thing with the whole cast. So that is really cool. They're also doing Quinn Lord, of course, as you know, from Sam from Trick or Treat. He is going to be in costume, which Todd mentioned is going to be kind of weird because he's like 6 feet tall now. So you're going to have a very tall Sam, but it's still cool to have the actual actor that played him in character. And they're also doing special photo ops with the Killer Clowns from Outer Space reunion, where two of the actors that played the clowns are going to be in costume with the cast, which is really awesome. And they're doing a special backdrop for Nick Castle and James Jude Courtney with the Michael Myers house. So a lot of really, really cool stuff with the photo ops. As far as guests, I don't think they've really announced anyone super new yet. I mean, James Jude Courtney and Nick Castle were the two newest additions I know of, but it's going to be a hell of a guest list. Is there anyone you're most excited for, Steve?
Personally, there's a few. Well, the one I'm definitely the most excited for, and I'm really, really psyched about, is Sam Raimi. Because I'm a big fan of his work, and I have an Evil Dead poster signed by Bruce Campbell and the three ladies who were in the movie. So to get to add Sam Raimi to that poster is just going to be like pretty much complete, right? As far as people who actually do cons. So I'm really excited about that. Ted Raimi is going to be there as well. So that's another one. Outside of that, though, there's the cast of The Terrifier. There's just a bunch of people. I mean, the Thing reunion, that's like 6 of them. So, and the Killer Clowns, I love the Killer Clowns. Now I have their autographs. I'm probably not going to meet them, but just to get to see them is really, really cool. So, and David Morrissey, I'm a big Walking Dead fan. He played the governor in season 3, and I'm pretty psyched to add to that poster as well. So it'll be a great time, but really the reason I'm going is to meet the listeners and just hang out with everybody. I think that's going to be kind of the highlight of that weekend. And I'm really, really looking forward to finally going to Texas. Everything's booked and ready to go. So I'm excited.
Hell yes. Awesome. Yeah, I got my VIP ticket and hotel, but man, flights right now are fucking crazy expensive. So I'm hoping they're going to drop. If not, I mean, it is Memorial Day weekend, so I know that's what's kind of is killing it right now, but I'm hoping it drops a little bit, because right now it's almost like $500 round trip, like per person, which is insanity to me.
Not only are the flights expensive, but more of a me problem than you problem. I'm gonna go on a fucking US tour to try to get there, because there ain't no direct flight from where I live to Dallas. So I'm gonna have to go to 4 or 5 different airports just to make it there. So my travel day is going to be like 12 hours long. It's just what a pain in the ass, but that's
brutal.
I mean, to get there, that's just the way it is, and I'm still looking forward to it.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's gonna be awesome, and hopefully even more people will come down, hang out. It's one of the best horror conventions in the country for sure. I absolutely love it. And Thursday, they usually do special screening. So if you come a day early, they usually attach it to obviously like some of the reunions last year. I think last year they did Scream and Nightmare on Elm Street with a lot of the cast there. And this year, I'm assuming they're probably gonna do like Sleepaway Camp and Killer Clowns would be my 2 best guesses, and probably The Thing. So, and there's at their new venue, there's a movie theater within walking distance to like all the hotels. So that's going to be super convenient for everyone. All right. So next bit of horror news here is Kevin Bacon returning to the Tremors franchise? ? Kevin Bacon took to Twitter recently to answer some fan questions. And of course, the question was brought up about the new Tremors movie that is going to be made, that is supposed to be getting a theater release. Now, as some people may or may not know, Kevin Bacon actually did return to the Tremors franchise when he filmed the pilot for the Tremors TV series that never took off the ground, which I hope gets released one day, maybe like leaked or something like that online, because I would love to see what that was like. But Kevin Bacon, the fans asked him about it over on Twitter, and he said, "I'm just waiting for the call." So Kevin Bacon wants to return to the franchise, obviously. I mean, seems like a fucking no-brainer to me. And with that, him kind of writing that on Twitter, I think the producers would be foolish not to at least reach out to him and make a call. But we'll see. What do you think, Steve? Is Kevin Bacon right for the return?
Absolutely. It'd be amazing. I mean, Kevin Bacon, he's a great actor, and I'd love to see him come back for that. Now, this is also a huge trend in horror right now, is to bring back actors from way back when into new versions of the properties that they're in. Of course, Scream, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, of course, all
New Nightmare.
Oh God, don't start. I'm not ready for it yet, but yeah, just a bunch of them. And I think that would fall in line. Now, I don't want to just to come back for the sake of coming back though. I'd like to have like a good solid script, and I hope they put the right people behind them and make something cool. So
now, something we haven't talked about in a very long time on this podcast, but we did report on it all the way back during the pandemic, was the Children of the Corn remake that they filmed during it. Not a lot has been recently released about it, but finally, ladies and gentlemen, it is coming, as we just received a release date. Children of the Corn's remake is going to be hitting theaters on March 3rd. They are giving it an 18-day theatrical window, and then it will be hitting on demand March 21st. Now, I am surprised this is getting a theater release at all. Like, I'm assuming it's going to be a super limited release. I can't imagine this is going wide, but I think probably good thing for the movie that, I guess the producers must have saw it and were happy enough with it that they're like, let's put this in theaters. Or do you think this is just a straight cash grab and they hope it will make a little bit of money in theaters?
I don't know. It depends on the situation. Like, how many theaters are we talking about? All that kind of stuff. Like, are they doing kind of a Terrifier 2 type thing where it's like 800 theaters, or is it like more of a 10 theaters, or I don't know. But I would think it's more of a cash grab personally. The name still has somewhat of some recognition out there in the horror community, and they want to get money before people realize it sucks. But I hope I'm wrong. I'd love to see a great remake of this, but I don't know why I have a bad feeling. Just the marketing alone, which we have seen zero of, is never a good sign. So we'll see.
Yeah, and so the movie apparently is said to have very little to do with King's novel. The plot synopsis of it is a psychopathic 12-year-old girl in a small town in Nebraska recruits all the other children and goes on a bloody rampage, killing the corrupt adults and anyone else who opposes her. A bright high schooler who won't go along with the plans is the town's only hope of survival. So there you go. Children of the Corn remake. Maybe something we'll cover on the show come March. We'll let you guys know. If not, you'll definitely hear it on our What Watch, I'm sure. All right, next bit of horror news here is an update on Robert Eggers' newest movie, which he is going to be doing Nosferatu. Finally, I am super excited about this. I think he is the perfect director to bring Nosferatu to the screen. Recently reported that Bill Skarsgård and Lily Rose Depp are going to be starring in the movie, as well as Nicholas Hoult, who we just did recently on for The Menu, and Warm Bodies, our Valentine's Day movie last year, right? Was it? And we're going to be announcing our Valentine's Day movie very soon for this year, which I am super excited about. So stay tuned for that as well. Well, Nosferatu has added a new actor, and it is Robert Eggers' staple, really. There's becoming a Robert Eggers staple, and that is Willem Dafoe. Willem Dafoe is going to be joining the cast here. I mean, he was fantastic in, of course, The Lighthouse and The Northman, and I mean, just an amazing actor, probably an underrated actor. I mean, I can't believe the dude's never won like any major awards because he always just absolutely kills it every time he is on screen. No details on exactly what he is going to be playing, but many people might remember him. Of course, he already played a vampire before in Shadow of the Vampire back in 2000. So yeah, we'll keep you guys updated on what he's going to play in this, but fantastic casting here. I'm so excited for this movie.
And he didn't just play a vampire. He played Count Orlok specifically,
right?
Because of course, Shadow of the Vampire is a movie about the making of Nosferatu. Amazing film if you can find it. Unfortunately, it's not available a lot of places from what I could see. We tried reviewing it for Nosferatu's 100th anniversary, but it was like nowhere to be found. So that really sucks. Now I have it on DVD, thank God, but a lot of people cannot find it, and that sucks. I wish that movie got more recognition because Defoe is fucking fantastic in it as Count Orlok, and Malkovich plays the director, and he's great as well. So really looking forward to seeing this movie. I think those are great actors. He's a great director. I have high confidence that this will be fucking awesome, especially if they even just the look of the lighthouse, transfer that to Nosferatu would be fucking so amazing. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to that.
Oh yeah, and just like his attention to detail and authenticity, I mean, I'm sure he's going to be using like old-timey cameras and shit like that. It's just going to look really, really cool and authentic. So Nosferatu, something we'll definitely be covering on the show, I'm sure. I mean, super excited. So I think that's coming maybe next year. I don't even know if they've started filming on it yet. Well, it's probably not, obviously, since they're still casting. So we'll keep you guys up to date. Steve, have you jumped on the Last of Us train yet?
I have. I watched the first 2 episodes. But yeah, so far, wow, it's a great fucking show. I played the game. It's one of my favorite games of all time. And it is probably the best example of a game adaptation I've ever seen. They're doing it perfectly. It's very close to the source material, which is what people always want out of the game and they never fucking give us. But at the same time, they deviate enough from it that makes it kind of its own thing. And so far, they're doing it perfectly.
Awesome. I haven't jumped on it yet, but I didn't know it takes place in Boston, which is cool. So that makes me even more excited to check it out. Did the video games take place in Boston as well?
Partially. There's like a part of it that's in Boston, but nice. It goes all over the place.
Okay, cool. Well, no surprise. Obviously, HBO has officially ordered a season 2 for The Last of Us. It's obviously like one of the hottest shows on television right now. It's absolutely killing it in streaming and whatnot. So we'll be getting a second season. No surprise there. All right, next bit of news here is a little bit of Chucky season 3 news here, as Don Mancini teases more potential legacy characters will be returning in season 3. We've already gotten, of course, the return of Andy Barclay. We've gotten the return of Kyle. We've gotten the return of Glenn and Glenda. So who is left to potentially return? Well, Don Mancini possibly may have teased a few more people, as he mentioned potentially Detective Mike Norris returning, aka Chris Sarandon's character. Also, I think the one that makes the most sense, it would be Karen Barkley, of course, which, of course, was played by Catherine Hicks in the original. And then, of course, Tyler from Child's Play 3. So those were kind of the 3 names he potentially teased. What do you think, Steve? Do you think, I don't know, do you think the show needs more legacy characters in here? Or, I mean, I don't know. Season 2 was very, lackluster. I don't know how much more life this series has in it. Bringing back legacy characters maybe breathes a little more life for at least 1 or 2 more seasons.
So I only watched half of season 2 because I just wasn't into it. Now I know the second half is better and I will force myself to watch it at some point, but I don't think they need more legacy characters. I mean, it would be cool maybe in a cameo or something, but they're already ham-fisting it, the other characters. As far as I've seen so far, they didn't need to bring back a lot of those characters outside of a cameo, and they don't. They really try to push them into the story somehow, and it just, I don't know. We'll see, I guess. It's funny because when you watch a show like this, you think you want to see the characters that you know and love, but when you're actually watching it, I wish they almost spent more time with the new kids than the legacy characters, because at least their story is fresh and interesting and stuff like that. So I guess we'll see. It depends how they bring him in and how much involvement they actually have.
All righty. So yeah, I mean, we'll keep you up to date, obviously. And season 3, I'll definitely be watching it because, like I said, season 2 definitely was a lot weaker than season 1, but did get better. So hopefully season 3 picks up a little more. All right, just a couple more stories to get through here. For those of you who have VR, Eli Roth has created a Valentine's horror movie. It is going to be called Eli Roth's Be Mine, a VR Valentine slasher. You will be able to watch that, for those of you, of course, with MetaQuest on Friday, February 10th in Meta Horizon Worlds. Now, for those of you who don't have VR, you will be able to also watch it on Crypt TV's Facebook and Instagram pages. Probably won't get the same, thing that you would in VR, but still kind of cool. So this, of course, was written by Eli Roth and directed by Adam McDonald, So the movie also stars Peyton List I think most famously from Cobra Kai, if I'm not mistaken. So this is going to be a 30-minute 360-degree immersive VR experience. It is going to follow Becca, a girl who is stalked by an anonymous maniac in a Cupid mask, as she finds herself at the center of a frightening Valentine's Day nightmare. So pretty cool. A lot of people I've seen in the comments are saying he basically ripped off Valentine, which yeah, he kind of did. But you know what? I mean, whatever. I'm all for more Valentine's Day horror. There isn't much out there whatsoever, except for, of course, Valentine and My Bloody Valentine, the two most famous ones. But I'm down for it. I was not a big fan of his last VR experience. He did a Halloween movie that starred Vanessa Hudgens. That one I wasn't feeling, but I think this one sounds a lot cooler. So so check it out. February 10th in VR. And finally tonight, we end on a little more of a somber note, a rest in peace, of course, to the original Wednesday Addams. Lisa Loring passed away. She was 64 years old. So thoughts and prayers to her, to an icon definitely of the genre. So rest in peace.
And someone who did a lot of cons lately, especially. So definitely a big loss for the con circuit. And she was great. And it's too bad because she just kind of had a resurgence, right? With the Wednesday show coming out. She also had a dance scene when she did the original Addams Family, and that's been coming back in a big way. So I feel like this would have made her more money, and now unfortunately she won't get to reap the benefits. And it's sad, when they pass away so young. And from all accounts, I know a few people who've met her, and they said she was fucking just amazing. So yeah, very sad to see that news, and rest in peace, thoughts to her and her family.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that is it for horror news this week. Thank you, everyone.
All right. So before we get into our What Watch segment, let's take a little coffee break for these cold winter days. And there's no better way to do that than with Deadly Grounds coffee.
Everyone thinks because you're a zombie, you don't know good coffee. Well, they're wrong. There's only one brew that gets my seal of approval. Deadly Grounds coffee is my guilty pleasure. The aroma is so intoxicating. It brings all of my neighbors out of the woodwork. Deadly Grounds coffee. Coffee to die for, and zombie approved. It's good to get a little deadly.
Use the front door!
Oh, they're so disgusting.
Ooh, I feel so warm now after that. that
right?
Wonderful Deadly Grounds coffee ad. All right, Steve, go for it.
They had Eugene Clark at their shop this week, so
I saw that. Yeah, that's cool. One of our listeners and Discord members went. That's super cool. I saw the pictures.
Yeah, very, very cool. I like that they have like horror guests and stuff like that. They're doing it more and more from what I can see, and that just makes it even more so of a place that people should go check out if you ever happen to be in the Toronto area, which I think is the only shop that they have right now. I might be mistaken, but I think that's the case right now, and I know they're expanding because I talked to the owner the last time I saw him at a con. So
yeah, I mean, they do so many cons too. So if you ever see them, go over, say hi, get some Deadly Grounds coffee. Their coffee is legitimately good too. I really enjoy it. The Hell's Fury is my favorite brew for them. So go and support Deadly Grounds coffee. We appreciate them. So Steve, let's get into it. What you been watching this week?
So much, Joe. Just happened. It was a like super snowy weekend, so I just sat down and watched a lot of movies. But I'm only going to talk about two. There's a lot of stuff that is not worth me putting any breath into because I watched some shit, and some other ones that I'll talk about at another time, like some of the Wes Craven ones that I've been knocking off the list for the retrospective. The first one is actually in relation to the episode that we had last week, Night of Something Strange. So I watched another movie from that same crew. So a lot of the same actors, a lot of the same people in the production unit. Is a 2016 film that I found over on Tubi, and it's called She Kills. So here's the tagline for this movie. She gets revenge the only way she knows how, with her STD Satan-infected vagina. So that is the tagline for this movie. So this movie is about this girl, and she's dating this kind of geeky guy, and they've never had sex or anything, and they're about to get married. So she's hanging out in the field, topless, of course, as you do. And this guy, he sees her in the field, and he really likes her, and he wants to, I'm assuming, rape her. But she stopped because her fiance comes to pick her up. So he gets kind of mad about it. So meanwhile, they decide to get married. And during the honeymoon, as he's about to have sex, this gang of people come in, kill the husband, and then all proceed to rape this woman, during her honeymoon and everything like that. And during this process, she realizes that her vagina is not what it seems. It is actually possessed by Satan. And it starts infecting the people that have raped her and have kind of made their way with her. And then after that scene, they kind of go away. She goes to see like one of her friends who exorcises the demon from her vagina, but that does take away the demon part, so it's no longer possessed, but she retains the power that her vagina has to attack people. So it becomes a revenge film where she goes to kill that gang of people who initially raped her with her vagina. As you can see, very much cut from the same cloth as Night of Something Strange. It is an absolutely fucking wild movie. Is it as wild as Night of Something Strange? I would say no, because it's really kind of focused on her and her vagina as opposed to all these fucking crazy elements. And if you listen to last week's episode, that movie just gets fucking crazy. This one does at times get that crazy, but not nearly as much. There's some weird shit in this movie as well. I mean, there's like a dance scene that goes on way too uncomfortably long for no reason at all. It's almost like they're trying to add to the runtime, and it's a weird film. I don't think it's as good as Night of Something Strange, but if you enjoy that, I think this would be one to check out as well. So that's She Kills over on Tubi.
You sold me. I want to see that one for sure because it sounds fucking insane. And I love exorcism type movies, so it sounds fun. All right, my first one tonight is from 1978, and it is a made-for-TV movie. I decided to check it out for our Wes Craven retrospective. It is called Summer of Fear, aka Stranger in Our House. This one stars the always lovely Linda Blair. They're a kind of a typical, everyday suburban family living their normal life. Linda, riding her beautiful horses and whatnot. And one day, the mom's sister dies in a car crash, the husband and wife. So their cousin, Linda Blair's cousin, Julia, comes to stay with the family. Everything seems all fine and dandy. And then Julia starts to sort of doesn't seem like quite like herself. Weird stuff starts happening, and Linda Blair's character starts suspecting that Julia might not be who she says she is, and maybe a witch. Yes, because Linda Blair starts, weird stuff starts happening to her right before she's ready to go to prom. Some welts start breaking out on her face, and lo and behold, guess what? Julia swoops in, ends up going with her boyfriend because, Linda Blair can't get out of bed and whatnot. So, very sneaky stuff going on there. And the rest of the movie is Linda Blair's character trying to convince everyone else that little, beautiful, innocent Julia is a witch and no one believes her. And Linda Blair needs to prove that she is a witch. This is nothing super memorable. It's a made-for-TV movie, so it's very, cookie cutter, vanilla, pretty generic. Linda Blair does a good job here, though. She's really solid as an actress. I mean, this is just a 5 or 6 years removed from Exorcist, so she's a little bit older. She has fucking like wild, crazy hair in this movie too, which was like super distracting. But she gives like a really good performance there. It was cool. Fran Drescher is in this movie, like super young, like plays like a nurse, and it was cool to see her in it. The movie picks up, I would say, in like the last half hour. But man, like the first like hour or so is like pretty like rough, like not rough, but it's just like nothing interesting really happens. Really, it's just like Linda Blair just literally trying to convince everyone like she's a witch. But like there's nothing really like super witchy happening. But the last half hour does get pretty cool. There's some pretty cool scenes in there. A really cool chase scene at the end. That is definitely the most entertaining thing. I just wish they did a little more. I mean, there's like a kind of a crazy reveal here too that I definitely didn't see coming. And I thought it was cool, but nothing great. You know, this is very early Craven. You know, this is only, I think, the third thing he's ever done, third or fourth movie he had ever done. So, yeah, I mean, I think this was kind of just like a paycheck movie, obviously, for him to get to his next project. And, you know, it's fine. I gave it 2.5 on Letterboxd. You know, it had some entertaining moments, but not something I would overly recommend. I would say only watch it if you're a Craven, you know, completist.
Yeah, and I will. One day.
Yes, you will. Oh, and it's on YouTube, I should mention. That's where I watched it.
Perfect. What if I told you that there is another? Oh, yes. Another film from the same crew as Night of Something Strange and She Kills. I had to check it out. I had to complete kind of, you know, some of their big films there. So this one I actually talked about briefly last week because I said that I was planning to put this up as a submission for our Shark Week episode, which we do every summer. We do a good shark movie and a bad shark movie. And I had suggested from reputation alone that we should do House Shark. So this film from 2017, I watched it over on Tubi. And like I said, same people from Night of Something Strange. I decided to check it out because I don't like to submit movies I haven't seen. I like to kind of test the waters first before I do so. And oh boy, am I glad for you guys that I did in this case. So House Shark is about a family. They live in a house and the mom, she goes to the bathroom, you know, to take a dump, as, you know, these movies always continue to start off as. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a shark comes out of the toilet and just absolutely destroys her. Blood everywhere in the bathroom. It's a complete mess. Her husband comes in. He's horrified, takes their son, and they go outside the house and live in a tent in the yard because they obviously don't want to have to deal with that. Meanwhile, their house is also for sale. So the agents, they really want to get this house sold, but now they got a problem. They got a shark inside the house. So the agency company sends someone, and the guy, they want to figure out a way to get the shark out of the house. So what they do, they hire a house shark expert, because that is a thing in this movie. They hire a Sith Lord and this guy who kind of looks like Abraham Lincoln and talks like him as well, completing the group of people who are going to get the shark out of this house. And that's basically what the movie's about, is them strategizing and trying to figure out ways of how to get in the house safely and then to get the shark outside of the house. Now, there are some good scenes in this. Some of the humor hit with me. I particularly loved the Sith character. He was actually really good. And, you know, I thought, okay, this is actually not pretty decent. And within the first like half hour, 45 minutes, I was actually thinking, okay, I think I will put this movie up as a submission for Shark Week, because it's actually kind of fun. You know, it's ridiculous, of course, very low budget, but it's fun. Yeah, here's the problem, and this is a big problem with me very often with these movies. It's almost 2 fucking hours long, and that is way too long for this type of movie. Now, if you're fucking Marvel or Avatar or something like that, okay, you can pull off a 2-hour movie, you know. But when you're in a movie called House Shark, you're not doing a 2-hour movie and keeping my interest. So after an hour, I was just bored to death. And sure, there were cool moments here and there, but there's so much wasted time of absolute nonsense throughout this that I just can't. I can't do it. I can't submit this movie. It's not, you know, it's no Cruel Jaws, that's for damn sure, which is probably my favorite bad shark movie that we've reviewed. Still decent enough, but like I said, too long. So if you want to check it out, just be prepared for that very long runtime. So House Shark over on Tubi.
Yeah, I noticed a lot of these filmmakers who make these like intentionally bad horror movies, like they just need to like get an editor or something, like you know, obviously they probably edit these movies themselves and they don't want to cut anything out, but man, like that and Sharks of the Corn, like that movie was fucking over 2 hours long. It's like, man, like you can only take so much and like knock it down to like hour 20, like at the most, I feel like, for a movie like that.
Hour 15 is the sweet spot, I think. For a future, like a full length bad movie or bad good movie or whatever. Yeah, hour 15 that's the sweet spot. That's when, you can kind of wrap up your story. But anything over than that, it gets to get too much. 2 hours, that's just way too fucking long for a movie like this.
Yeah, like even Greasy Strangler, which I love, I even feel like that's even like maybe 15, 20 minutes too long and needs to get, they could have cut that down a little more too. But yeah, so just a little note for directors out there who might be making movies. All right, my last one tonight, 2023 release, just released recently over on VOD, is a movie called Candyland. This one is about, we follow a group of prostitutes who are working at this truck stop on the Bible Belt that the truck drivers who come through call, you guessed it, Candyland, due to all of the prostitutes and sexual deviation that's happening there. Yeah, so we follow 3 or 4 female prostitutes and 1 male prostitute, kind of like what their sort of everyday life is, at this truck stop. There's also a hotel attached, so they all kind of live in this hotel and are sort of like really close best friends. Well, one day, obviously being on the Bible Belt, a sort of religious cult comes through and, says, you can be saved, blah, blah, blah. And a few hours later, or maybe a day later, one of the girls from the religious cult comes. She has decided to run away from this religious cult and kind of has nowhere to go. So, this ragtag group kind of takes her in, and, they kind of end up convincing her to be a prostitute with them. And then murders start happening, essentially. There's some sort of murderer. I don't want to say anything. You kind of know who the murderer is pretty early on, but murders essentially start happening at this rest stop, and basically try to figure out who did it and also what is going on. And I'll leave it at that, because obviously this is a new movie and, I want people to see it. This movie has really great character building. You really learn to get attached to a lot of these characters. There's fantastic cinematography throughout. And, I love, religious and cult horror movies, so this was right up my alley. This movie's dirty too. It's really dirty and sleazy. There's a lot of nudity. Obviously you're dealing with prostitution, so there's a lot of sex scenes, a lot of nudity and stuff like that. So it's a pretty sleazy type movie too, but it's handled for the most part pretty well. Trigger warning too, there is a rape scene as well in here, so some people might be turned off from that. But overall, I really dug this movie. It was, for the first hour, I was like, this really isn't a horror movie just because murders are happening. But the last 30 minutes, goes fucking really full bore, crazy religious / cult type horror, and it definitely hits the mark, I think, for horror. It's a slow burn, I would say, but the characters are all so interesting that I always wanted to see what they were going to do or what they were going to say or what was going to kind of happen next. That it's great it's great acting throughout. It's in my top 10 obviously right now because we haven't watched much this year, but I think I would be surprised if it leaves my top 10 because I really ended up enjoying this one. I don't think it's going to be near my top, but I think it will sneak in around 9, 8. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I think a lot of people will enjoy this one as well. I like I said, it's definitely, I could see people saying it's not really horror, but I think there's definitely enough there, especially towards the end, to consider it for a horror movie. So I recommend this one for sure. And that's Candyland.
I'd heard good things, so I'm really happy to hear that because I just got it recently. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I had high hopes for this one, and I remember seeing the trailer and thinking it looked good. It almost looked like what I felt X looked like last year. So I'm psyched about it. Can't wait to see it finally.
I'm sorry, it definitely has some X vibes to it. It actually has one of the actors from X in it as well. The dude who was dating Jenna Ortega's character is a main character in this one. So it definitely gives some X vibes off. Not as good as X though.
Yeah, I figure as much. Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's I gotta say, so far this year, not the greatest top 10 I have. So I'd like to get something on there that I'm actually happy about. So it's still early, so there's still a lot of year left. All right. So trigger warning for everybody. This is about to get very intense. Just based off conversations we had offline. So I'm really psyched about what we're finally doing this. New Nightmare. So Joe, you want to give us a little rundown of this piece of cinema?
Sure, absolutely. Wes Craven's New Nightmare, ladies and gentlemen, came out in 1994. So this one came out, quite a few years after kind of the Freddy franchise was, a few years after, I guess, Freddy's Dead. It is the return, of course, of Wes Craven finally directing after the original Nightmare on Elm Street. And yeah, this one, very different than, I would say, every other Elm Street movie, for sure. This was sort of his meta look at the Elm Street franchise. I mean, this, we'll get into it, but this was really I feel like it was his sort of test to see like how, before Scream, like to see how meta horror would work. So that was really interesting. So yeah, we open the movie with meeting Nancy, but it's not Nancy. It's Heather Langenkamp, the actress. So yeah, the Elm Street franchise, exists as just movies in this movie. And, Heather Langenkamp, obviously far removed sort of from the franchise, 10 years since the original movie. She's kind of, I would say a struggling actress, sort of. Her husband works in effects, also in the Hollywood industry. Weird earthquakes are starting to come up in the LA area. They've been getting a lot more earthquakes than normal. And, eventually Heather ends up meeting up with some of her old Elm Street gang. And, Wes Craven, essentially what happens is Wes Craven is writing a new script and they want her to play Nancy once again. While all this is happening, her son, Dylan, is essentially he's having nightmares and is starting to potentially have nightmares about Freddy. And yeah, I mean, from there, it kind of delves into, is Freddy real? Like, we'll get into it, but essentially Wes Craven kind of is saying he's been having nightmares and the only way to stop them is by writing this script because Freddy is trying to enter into the real world. And then, reality and the movies start to sort of blend together. And yeah, I mean, we'll just leave it at that. I mean, if you've seen the movie, you'll know. But yeah, I don't know. Steve, I guess you can lead us off here. I know we're going to have very differing opinions on this movie, so go for it.
Yeah, it's very, very different for sure. I'd seen this a few times, and this is one of those movies that I revisit, I'd say every like 5 years, thinking I'm going to change my mind as to whether I like it or not. Because in the past, by memory, of course, I didn't have Letterboxd at the time, I did not like this movie whatsoever. And then I revisit thinking, you know what, maybe I was judging it on, too harshly or unfairly, which is the same thing I said for those who listen to this podcast when we did Freddy's Dead, which unfortunately Joe wasn't on. I said the exact same thing where, I'm going to give it another shot. And same thing as Freddy's Dead. I did not like this very much at all. Now, do I think it's better than Freddy's Dead? I would say yes, by a bit, by like just a tiny bit. But I would say it's a little bit better. I just don't think it works. I like the idea of this film, but I don't feel that the film works because the rules are kind of all over the place. The acting is not good. I'm sorry. Other than Heather Langenkamp, I think the acting across the board is bad, which is especially bad when a lot of these people are playing themselves. Like Wes Craven, Robert Englund don't play good versions of themselves, which is crazy to me. Like it just blows my mind. And there's just a lot of stuff that and I'll talk about the specifics more after Joe goes, that I just thought was just dumb, to be honest with you. And the worst thing about this whole experience, I find the movie kind of boring because it takes a fucking long time before anything meaningful happens. Freddy is not in it for a good while, and other than popping up very briefly at certain times, specifically in some scenes like the funeral. But it's just, I don't know, it didn't work. But like Joe said, when I was watching it this time, I definitely got early Scream like vibes to it. Like I could see that this is where Wes Craven was starting to brew the Scream idea, and obviously Scream's fucking fantastic. So I'm almost glad he did this before and kind of shook the cobwebs off that idea, because there are some great things, but this is like the failed version of that. So I did not like this at all.
All right. So I'm kind of opposite Steve here. I think this is one of the better Elm Street movies out there, and mainly because I think this was the absolute right way to go for this franchise. After 5 and 6, I mean, both those movies were just terrible, and they really made Freddy into a joke. There was no horror left in Freddy. He was just, a character at that point. So, they kill off Freddy, obviously, with Freddy's dead, and obviously the fans want more Freddy, and Craven, they obviously asked Craven to come back, and obviously they were like, do what you want, Wes, and he did, and he took a swing, and I said this in my Letterboxd review, he swung, he took a hard swing, and I don't think he hit a home run with this. This movie obviously definitely has problems, no doubt about it, but I think he made really solid contact. I think this is, it was a risk, and I respect him for taking the risk. He tried to do something very different, and it was cool. I think there's a lot of fan service here, and I'm a Freddy fan, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed seeing, Heather Langenkamp playing herself, and Robert Englund playing himself, and Wes Craven, playing himself. It was great to see, Heather going into the New Line offices and seeing, Bob Shea, and there's just so many fun cameos, and then, callbacks to that original movie that I enjoyed it for the most part. I definitely have issues with it for sure. And I know we're going to get into it because Steve, I'm sure, has a lot, but overall, I thought, albeit this movie obviously is definitely too long at almost 2 hours, and it definitely does drag at times. And the lack of Freddy, I definitely recognized more because I probably haven't watched this movie fully in 15 years, maybe. I've seen bits and pieces of it here and there when it's on TV, or I did an Elm Street like watch party years ago where we watched the entire thing, but I think I was like half paying attention once we finally got to New Nightmare. But I think bringing Scary Freddy back was great. There's really, he's a very dark character in this. I also thought there was like pretty good dread in this movie. I thought the score, highlighted that, and there is some goofy moments, but I thought overall, like, there was like I definitely felt like a darker tone to this movie overall. So overall, I think it's a pretty solid movie.
You know what I think the better film would have been, in my opinion, of course, right, is basically that opening scene. I wish they were making a new Freddy movie, a new Nightmare on Elm Street movie, and shit started happening as they're making it. Shit's going weird with the props, and then you have all the people still there, obviously, because they're making a new one, and they start killing off the actors, and they don't know what's going on. That first scene, even though all we really get is the robotic glove that starts attacking people, I liked more than a lot of the stuff that we saw in the rest of the movie. I thought that would have been the better film, is the making of a new Nightmare on Elm Street rather than the writing of a new Nightmare on Elm Street, because the whole script thing went right over my head. Now, maybe there's some deep meaning to that, all that stuff, and I'm sure Joe will have caught it if there was, but it just, I didn't like it at all. The whole thing, he's just writing it, and all of a sudden that's what triggers earthquakes for everyone in Los Angeles. I don't know if that's just, but they do it a lot. They do a lot of fucking earthquakes. Like, it's almost an earthquake movie, more so than the Freddy movie for the first hour of this. It just didn't make sense to me. It just, that was not good. Heather Langenkamp is also way too quickly convinced that Freddy's coming to attack her. She's been living with this franchise for 10 years. You see her go to talk shows and stuff like that. Now, presumably, this is not the first time she's done talk shows and, Freddy events and conventions, stuff like that. So why now, after one dream, she's all of a sudden like, okay, this is absolutely happening to me and very real. Now, I get there like coincidences that she notices, but it's too quick, because she wakes up from that dream her limo driver calls, she hears something on the phone. She doesn't think a fan's messing with her. No, of course, that's implausible. The real plausible thing here is Freddy's probably coming after her to kill her. I don't know. What do you have to say about those?
Sure. Yeah, I think obviously, like, she's way too convinced too quickly that, yeah, like Freddy is coming to get her. I think it should have been more of the stalker, right? Like that she had clearly, like she should have been more scared about that. The earthquakes make sense to me based on the story, because essentially the earthquakes are happening because Freddy is ready to erupt into the real world. So that is why we are getting the earthquake. So it makes sense. Is there too many in this movie? Absolutely. Like, it just happens way too often. You know, we didn't need like 20 earthquakes. You know, we would have gotten the point if there were just like 2 or 3, you know, and I would have been cool with it. So I do agree there's just way too many earthquakes in it, albeit I think it does make sense. As far as the script writing goes, I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, you know, Wes is having these nightmares and he's writing them down, and it's the exact story is being written like as the movie is happening. I mean, it's interesting. Like, you know, is it, you know, crazy, far-fetched? Sure. But like, you know, you just kind of go with it. I was able to just go with it for this movie because it is, you know, it's fantasy, even though it is supposed to be taking place in the real world. But I don't know. It didn't really bother me. I thought it was kind of a cool, interesting thing to do. Now, as far as the acting goes, I think Heather Langenkamp is great in this movie, actually. And maybe it is because of the rest of the acting is bad. I mean, this is her best role, probably, like she's ever done. Like, she's, you know, because her acting in 1 and 3 are, you know, fine, serviceable, I guess. But I think she elevates this movie a lot. And I mean, we follow her the entire movie. She is obviously the star of this movie. She's hardly ever off screen. And yeah, I thought she was great. England, I thought Craven was fine in England. Like, their acting didn't bother me really. I thought the husband though was terrible. I thought he was just horrible. I think he's one of the worst parts of this movie, along with, sadly, Dylan. He's a kid. I get it. But man, he was good in Pet Sematary and like all of his other like kid acting roles. But I don't know if it's like just a script in this, but man, there's some really cringy shit with him. Like him pretending to kind of be Freddy, I think at points, like making these weird voices and shit like that. I could not stand him. He was annoying the shit out of me a lot of this movie. Yeah. So what'd you think of Dylan?
Hate him. And yeah. You're right. Like, I fucking love that kid. Like, he's great in Pet Sematary. He's great in Kindergarten Cop. You know, he's a good kid actor in this movie. Ooh, but I agree with you. Like, Heather Langenkamp was fantastic, but him, I could not stand him. This movie is way too whiny and over the top, and yeah, I wasn't into that character at all, and I almost wish he wasn't in it. It was more about Freddy attacking, you know, Nancy or Heather Langenkamp, I guess, in this movie than the kid. But I did really love the whole like talk show thing, seeing all the Freddy fans and the merch and stuff like that. And speaking of Robert Englund, I kind of wish they did more with him. You know, if like, it's just, you'd think he'd be more involved because it's his character that's attacking, but he just disappears. He paints for some reason, and then she's supposed to go see him the next day, and that's it. That's it for it's just such a disservice to.
Yeah. So I agree. Like, and you just had made me think, like, would the better movie have been if Freddy was coming after Robert Englund, like, right? His character, like, attacking him, which that would have been kind of cool. Could have been interesting. But I mean, obviously I get it. Nancy is, you know, kind of the final girl. So, it made sense to follow her character. You know, I mean, he was having nightmares too, right? Like, basically all of the original characters were having nightmares that, you know, were, you know, all the legacy characters essentially. And when he did that painting, I think it made him realize that Freddy was coming, like, into the real world, which is why he ends up going wherever he disappears. He's like, yeah, you know, we might not be back for some time or whatever, you know, on the voicemail he gets. But I also found it funny that when Heather goes to do the talk show with Robert, he comes out, everyone loves Freddy and stuff, and then it pans to what you actually see at conventions, 1 million fans, you know, clamoring for Freddy's autograph, and Heather just kind of standing there with their arms crossed. Even though nowadays Heather's gotten super popular at cons, but still, Englund, of course, is the star of the franchise and always will be. So yeah, But yeah, I mean, I don't know what else you got here.
So do you find it made him look weak a little bit? Because he does so little to like fix the situation, and he just really he pieces out. Like, this whole thing is happening to her, and from one of his character, he's obviously like going through something as well. Like you said, the painting, which I'm gonna talk. I want to talk about the painting after, but I have like weird notes for the end. Just questions I have for you. And then he pieces out, and you don't see him for the rest of the movie. And I don't know, that was a weird choice to me, but it is what it is.
I think a lot of it has to do with, he had to play Freddy too in this movie. So,
but you have him for the movie. Like, it's not like he wasn't available.
Absolutely. I mean, that would have been cool if they could have gotten someone else to play Freddy, and then Heather or like they could have did like, how they kind of do split screen things like with the movie magic, but like could have been Robert and Heather fighting Freddy together. I mean, which is why that's another reason I just don't think Dylan was necessary here. Like, I understand like it's a mother trying to protect her son. Freddy attacking, your child is a terrifying idea. But I think you're right. I think the better movie here is like Heather and Robert fighting Freddy off together rather than Dylan, who no one really cares about anyway, like he's never been in the movie. So yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think that would have been a cooler idea. Do I have a problem with Robert piecing out though? Not really. Like, because he knew shit was about to hit the fan, so he got out of Dodge. I mean, can you blame him? Like, he wanted to live.
If I'm Robert Englund and I read the script, I'd be like, fuck, seriously? Like, you can't give me something better than this? Like, I've been carrying your franchise for 10 years, and what you give me is I just leave the movie because I'm too scared of what's going on.
I wonder what he thinks about that. I'm sure people have asked him about it, or maybe not. I don't know. I mean, you don't really hear too many people talk about New Nightmare. I know it does have a pretty, it's definitely a divisive movie. Like, I think it's either a like it or hate it type movie. There's really no in middle ground with this movie.
Absolutely. Now, speaking of Freddy, of course, one of the controversial things, I guess, is that he looks different, right? He's wearing a trench coat. His makeup's a little different. It's not like we're used to. Now, I don't think the makeup is great, but I personally get why they did it, because they had to separate, I guess, the fictional Freddy from the real, quote unquote, Freddy. So I thought it was fine. Like I said, not the greatest makeup ever, but I appreciate that at least it was recognizable enough that you knew that was Freddy, but different enough that okay, this is New Nightmare Freddy. So I thought that was cool. And I like that they're trying to go for the more sinister kind of dark Freddy that the original Nightmare on Elm Street was all about. And that's what I wanted to see in a new Nightmare on Elm Street, was a darker, especially after fucking 5 and 6, just absolutely ridiculous Freddy. I just don't think they necessarily succeeded. He never really scared me all that much, because he was still kind of goofy a little bit. And we'll talk about the whole end sequence where she actually fights him, which is where you get to see Freddy, more than anything. So what do you think of the costume, the makeup, and how scary he actually is?
Yeah, I think it works too. I do think the makeup is a little weird though, for sure. But I get it. I totally agree with what you said. I think the trench coat was a really cool touch. I do like the trench coat look with Freddy here. I fucking love that the glove thing, how it's not an actual glove. It's like his actual hand with like the blades. I think that looked fucking badass. I loved that idea. I think though, like facial wise, they could have did better. I think it could have been more demon-like, sort of like we see in Freddy versus Jason when you get that demon Freddy thing. That would have been really a cool look for here. It's just like too like artificial looking, right? It almost looks like a mask. And I think it definitely hurts it a little bit. But overall, I like the look. I don't have a massive problem with it. Is it the best Freddy makeup? Obviously not. I mean, I think parts 3 and 4 are the absolute best Freddy looks, in my opinion. I mean, I know a lot of people love 1 and 2 as well. And 5, I think, is his absolute worst look in the franchise, probably. But yeah, I mean, it's cool. It's fine. I got no issues with that, really.
Yeah, you're right. Like, it wasn't his scariest makeup, which is ironic because he's supposed to be kind of at his scariest here, I would think, because he's, kind of the demon Freddy. So I don't have a lot of notes from the middle of the movie, because I find it really just doesn't do much. There's not much happening in the middle of the movie. She goes to the morgue and somehow just fucking walks in the morgue. They're doing fucking autopsies, mid-autopsy. They're just like, yeah, come on in. We'll show you the body. It's no problem at all. Super weird. Then we have the funeral, which is we get to see Freddy do a kind of attack.
That was a cool scene. I like that.
It was a cool scene, but I don't know if it was earned at that point. It was so out of place. It was very short, and then you don't see Freddy for a while again after that.
You do, yeah. I did note that. That is like, I think the only time we see Freddy until I think like an hour and 10 minutes, which is long. I mean, that's a long time before you see Freddy. Now, I didn't hate all the middle and build up. Like, I think the movie, is building up for finally being able to see Freddy. And I mean, I get it. Like, I can see why people would hate it or wouldn't like that. But I just really enjoyed seeing all of the legacy characters come back. Obviously, Robert, Wes, Bob Shea from New Line. And then, of course, John Saxon, who I thought was really good in this movie, even though in a limited capacity, you don't see him much. But I thought the playground scene was cool with like the two of them talking, and then kind of Dylan being on top there, highlighted by the score when he is like, which I thought was great. I think the score in this movie is great, which I think I already mentioned, but it's a great score. It's very like haunting, sort of choirish, religious sort of stuff. It's creepy. But yeah, I mean, I can see why people would be turned off because you don't get a lot of Freddy in that first hour. But I was okay with it. Like, because you get little pieces of him, right? Like, obviously the husband's death. You don't see Freddy, but Freddy's glove, attacks it, which I thought was a pretty cool death. One of the better ones in the movie, which doesn't have a high body count at all. Which
I was going to say, like, that's very little body count in this movie.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I was okay with it because I think if you are and I know you and Todd aren't the biggest Elm Street fans out there, and me being probably the biggest Elm Street fan on the show, I was cool. I was just enjoying what I was seeing with all of the old legacy characters coming back and all that stuff. So yeah, that's why I dug it.
And just for the record, 1 and 3 masterpieces. The rest good. Some of them are pretty bad, but sure. I'm not a big fan of the later Elm Street films. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
Yeah, my problem with the middle is just it's too much of just basically Heather trying to convince people that this is happening, and then getting the cameos in, and then the kid like constantly doing these weird noises and going into trances, and I don't know. I was bored, and that was kind of a problem. And at a certain point, I'm like, okay, is Freddy going to show up to this thing, or like what's this whole thing leading to? Which leads to a final confrontation between Freddy and Heather and Dylan. So what did you think of the final kind of battle between the two in what was very obviously a set?
Very obviously a set. Yeah. I mean, before we get to that part, I did want to mention the hospital scene, which I think is one of the best scenes in the movie. It's Freddy finally sort of enters the real world. Well, before that, actually, he does have an encounter with Heather, which was, pretty good. But the hospital scene, I think, is where Freddy really, really shines in this movie. Dylan, is being essentially, we come to find out that Dylan is having all of these sort of psychosis moments because of sleep deprivation. He's having these nightmares about Freddy. He's not sleeping and whatnot. And, they say due to that, he's having sort of psychotic episodes, sort of. So they're kind of, having observations. They, of course, drug him, which is like seems really shady, but they kind of, I guess I understand why they did it, because the kid had to sleep. But yeah, Heather isn't there. The babysitter is, and Freddy, enters finally the real world, sort of, and kills the babysitter. It's very similar, of course, to the Tina death from part 1, which obviously, is an homage, as Wes does a lot of homages to part 1 in this movie. Because at one point, I remember Heather's running down the hospital, and the nurse says, "Where's your pass?" And she says, "Screw your pass," like she does in part 1 with the hall monitor, which I thought was fun.
And the phone lick, like
and the phone lick, yeah, right, yep. And then of course, at the when we get to the very ending, where John Saxon has now turned back into her dad, and Heather has become Nancy again. And we see the Elm Street house. That was all kind of cool. It's kind of Freddy playing tricks, I suppose. But that part does get a little confusing. I can understand why people might be a little, what the hell's going on here? But I think it's just kind of Freddy playing tricks in the real world is how I took it. But I think that as far as kills go, I think the hospital scene is the best kill in the movie. Dragging the babysitter, up the wall, and it was cool. I really dug that scene. And I think that's where probably Freddy is at his scariest, and then Freddy at his worst is the fucking freeway scene. Oh my God, what a rough scene. I mean, I get it. Like, oh man, it's just so obviously like green screened and shit. Like, it just looks so fucking bad. And the idea of Freddy being up in like the sky sort of was like cool, but man, it just does not look good with today's standards.
No, and you're right. Like, the hospital scene is where it starts to pick up a little bit. And I was like excited to see that it was starting to feel like an Elm Street movie. But yeah, after that, they lost me. Between the freeway scene and the entire final sequence in, I don't know, the castle area or where the fuck / I don't know what the hell they were in.
So like Freddy is supposed to be this ancient demon, right? Like, that's kind of how Wes describes it. So like we end up in his sort of, I don't know, like where he was conjured up or whatever, like his sort of house. I didn't love the set like design at all for this final battle. The coolest part was when Heather, takes the sleeping pills to go into the dream world, which why is she going to the dream world if Freddy's supposed to be in the real world now? I don't know, I mean, that's where it starts to get a little hazy, but she takes the sleeping pills to go save Dylan, and she jumps down into the bed that now has like this huge opening, and she comes out of like Freddy's mouth. It's like this water fountain thing. I thought that was cool. That was like the coolest part of the set design for me, is like the water fountain Freddy mouth. I didn't love the closing scene, and that is my biggest complaint with this movie. That's why I said, Wes swinged for the fences, and he may not have hit a home run, but made solid contact. And the fact that he didn't hit the home run is in this final end sequence. It is very lackluster. It is not a great final battle, and mainly because he just like he did like the whole Gretel and Hansel fairy tale, which we have that scene where I get it, like Heather's reading Dylan the Hansel and Gretel fairy tale, and then they fucking just like mimic it in the final scene, and it was lame.
Yeah, well, when he tries to eat him, it's so goofy looking, and it reminds me more of like the later Nightmare on Elm Street films and stuff like that. And then it's just the whole thing didn't feel like fun. It's just so lame. Freddy didn't feel like scary anymore to me. He just grunts, and he like uses his claws to make noise, and he
never felt like a threat.
No, at all. Like, and there's this super goofy scene where his leg is hurting. He's a fucking demon in the dream world, but his head he's got like trouble like walking, he's limping. And then they go into a slow motion shot of him limping while he's running, Dylan's running away from him. Like, what the fuck is that? It was so stupid. And then so finally they bring him into the furnace, of course, because it's the Hansel and Gretel kind of tale that they're retelling. And they eventually trap him in the furnace, and there's all these snakes because sure. And they close the door with him in the furnace, but they don't lock the door. They don't put something in the fucking like groove to. No, he could have just literally slid the door back open and gotten out, no problem at all. But no, he stays in there and turns into like a demon, I guess. And then his head blows up. The whole end sequence was just like, it was just about to start to get me again, and then right back down. Like, okay, I remember why I don't like this film. Between the concept and all the stuff, this scene is just, this is where it could have gotten better, and it just didn't.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this movie could have been like one of my favorites in the entire franchise. Had this ending nailed it, and unfortunately, it doesn't. I think that's the problem with a lot of the Elm Street franchise. The final battles with Freddy are never like that great. Like they're always a little disappointing. I guess part 3,
except Freddy versus Jason.
I don't even
that final battle.
The Freddy versus Jason battle. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, that is high entertainment for sure.
Right.
But I think Wes could have did something better with this. I think they thought, I mean, the set it's an even though I don't love it, it is an impressive set. Like they spent a lot of money definitely building that thing.
It just looks too fake. Am I mistaken that it's the same set that we saw at the beginning of the film?
Maybe
it would make sense, right? If she's
it would make sense. I don't. Yeah, I mean, it's quite possible. That's together.
How I like tried to make it okay in my brain is that he's using the set from the movie that Wes had essentially written, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of accepting it, but it looked bad because when I'm very obviously, I don't know, some movies it looks like it could be a real thing. This so looked like a set. Just the way the fire is, you could totally tell it's a canister that's just shooting like gas and fire. It doesn't look like natural. It just didn't look good, and I just added like the boiler room would have been awesome. That you'd be keeping with Freddy. And I know they want to do something different, but it just didn't work for me.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't the best, but I think this is a much better way to kill off Freddy than Part 6. Like at the end of the day, I mean, I'll take
Part
this.
6 is so bad.
Yeah,
God, it's bad. Oh boy. All right. So, and then the last thing before I get to some of the kind of more offbeat questions that don't really have anything to do with the film or a little bit. What did you think about the end where they kill Freddy, they're spat out of the bed again, and she sees the script on the ground and she reads the last pages of the script, which is the lines that they're about to say, like they haven't said those lines yet, and then they close it and he's like, read me a story. She opens the script up again and starts reading him the fucking script that just like terrorized her for the entire movie. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Why would she read the script to that kid? Why is she putting that script in a fire to get rid of it? It made no sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, like at the end of the day, like they defeated Freddy now, so there's nothing to be afraid of, I suppose. So it's just a story again, I guess, is kind of what they were going for. I was fine with it. Like I didn't hate it. Like it made sense for the rest of the movie that they were basically working on the script to find, and Heather finally defeated it, and Wes even had his little note in there that says thanks for playing Nancy, one last time. And he wasn't really writing a movie. He was writing, I guess, the end of Freddy, like to finally defeat this ancient deity or whatever.
Or was he? Was he just writing? Is she just reading the script as if, okay, so that's the movie, as if the whole thing was just her reading the script essentially for the next movie, and she's just reenacting it. Maybe she's playing. Maybe she's like pretending they're under the covers, pretending that they're in the dungeon as she's practicing her final role as Nancy.
All right, sure.
Right. I'm trying to justify this fucking bad ending somehow, and that's what I could come out with. Is the whole thing was just her reading the final Nightmare on Elm Street film.
Interesting.
She was just reenacting it with the kid. That's why the kid's in it. Her kid's there, and she's using the people she knows. She uses her husband, people that she knows to kind of make it make sense in her head. And the whole movie is just basically her reenacting and reading the script.
You can go that way, I suppose. I never really thought of it like that. But
it could be. It's probably totally wrong, but that's how I try to justify it.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, that's definitely not how I perceived it, but hey, there's no wrong theories, I suppose, here.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, a few like dumb questions that I had just as I was watching this. First one, now you're only 5 years younger than me, but I'm sure you're old enough to remember just how fucking dangerous playgrounds were when we were kids. Do you think realistic that playground looked like death, and our parents would send us to fucking death playgrounds the same way that we're all fucking metal and rust? And it was basically like, if you're gonna survive in this world, kid, you have to survive this fucking rusty playground.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, like I felt that was super like realistic. I remember like the slides that used to bake in the sun and you go down and you get 3rd-degree burns like on your fucking legs if you weren't shorts. So yeah, totally.
Yeah, I had one playground in particular. It was a McDonald's playground. I'm telling you, man, you send your kids there the same way that like they send that Leonidas and 300 out for the wolf. It's like, if you can survive this playground, you're probably fit for this world. If you don't, well, we tried. So yeah, it was crazy. And if you go to a playground now, oh my god, it's not even fun anymore. It's just totally like, it's too safe. These kids are just growing up to be too safe. My other question. So speaking of the Robert Englund painting in this movie, how much do you think a Freddy painting from Robert Englund would be worth today?
It's a great question. One like that, oof, man, sky's probably the limit. I know like Freddy, if you ask him, he will draw like little caricatures of Freddy. I don't know if you've ever seen those in autographs he's done. It's pretty cool. Not very detailed. Takes him like 10 seconds to do it, but those autographs I think go for a little bit more. As far as a painting like that, who knows, man? Like, I could see some crazy Freddy fans paying like 50 grand for it, maybe more. Who knows?
Yeah, it's pretty detailed. The fact that it's like painted by Robert Englund, I think 50 grand would be fair. I would assume. And my last question is, since we're talking about the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise, of course, as we talked about before with Kevin Bacon, everyone's coming back doing their franchises. Robert Englund not getting any younger. So what would you think? What do you think we need to see as a final Robert Englund led Nightmare on Elm Street? Because this kind of ended the series, right? Other than Freddy vs. Jason, which was kind of a spin-off. What do you think they need to do if they're going to bring him back for one final film?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think you would probably go the route of something similar to Halloween or Scream, right? Like sort of like this, I suppose, but like not base it in reality like this, where sort of, I mean, you can't bring Heather Langenkamp back though. You'd have to ignore part 3, obviously. So it would have to be like a direct sequel to the original movie where maybe like Heather is a mom now and her kid is starting to get nightmares, all these years later, and Freddy's, returned after all these years to once again stalk the kids of Elm Street. Something like that. I suppose, I can't think of anything better right now, but, I think bringing back, Heather one last time would be cool to see. And yeah, I mean, I think Englund, he for years said he was done, but more recently he's kind of warmed up to maybe playing Freddy one last time. I know that the Craven estate finally got the rights back, and they've just been holding on to it for the past few years, saying that they're waiting for the right script to come. I know a lot of big directors are out there clamoring for it. I know Elijah Wood really wants to do it with his production company, and Michael Dougherty has also expressed interest. I'm sure Blumhouse is really clamoring for it. So I think if it's going to happen, it needs to happen like now, like you cannot wait, especially if you want Robert Englund to come back. He's 70s now. And I know he's got bad arthritis because he really limits himself at cons now, which makes it even more impossible to meet him unless you have a VIP. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to do it like within the next year or two, or else Robert Englund's never coming back and being Freddy.
See, the way I would like it is, was it Peter Jackson that wrote Nightmare on Elm Street treatment for, I forget which, I think it's Freddy's Dead.
I think it was 6. Yeah.
And the treatment I think was a great idea that would work now. So it's basically Freddy's like become kind of a joke because he's weak, and it's gotten to the point where he's such a joke that kids are like shooting themselves with some kind of drug that puts them into the dream world where they go like essentially like tease and make fun of Freddy and stuff like that. So recognizing that he's getting weak and losing his power, he trains, like essentially passes the baton to a new dream demon. Like he picks someone, makes them a new dream demon, and then they both go on a killing spree as he's like fading away. So that you get him, but you explain why he's weaker than he was, and he's not as fucking jumpy as he was in previous films, but you're also continuing the franchise into the future. Or should the franchise just die? For some reason in horror, I feel like it should go on forever, but non-horror, I'm like I never want to see another Back to the Future. I don't think there should be another Indiana Jones if Harrison Ford passes away. Like for some reason, I'm like very protective of non-horror, but not so protective about horror. So maybe they should just end it with one last Elm Street film. I don't know. It's what do you feel? Would you like to see it end? Do you think it should end with like Craven and, well, not Craven anymore, I guess, but with Robert Englund being still alive, or do you think you'd like to see it going forever?
Yeah, it's tough because like horror fans are so protective, like over Robert Englund being Freddy, and he is Freddy, to be fair. I think there's a lot more life to be breathed into this franchise, though, even without him, honestly. I think there's so many ideas and cool ideas they could do. You just need to find the right actor, obviously, to play Freddy. I don't think Jackie Earle Haley did a terrible job. Like, I just think it was the wrong movie, the wrong makeup, CGI effects on him. I think you got to still pay homage to that original Freddy and kind of have the same type of look, even with a different actor. Or similar at least. Going in the complete like opposite direction just didn't work. But yeah, I mean, I attribute obviously the 80s slashers to the new Universal monsters, and I think they are always going to be around. There'll always be Texas Chainsaw movies, Freddy movies, Halloween movies, Friday the 13th movies. They're all and Hellraiser movies. Those guys are always going to be there, one way or the other, because they make money, and the studios are going to keep making them. Now, Elm Street definitely has been the one that has been falling behind compared to all these other ones, for sure.
Friday as well.
Well, Friday because of the lawsuit. If there wasn't a lawsuit, we probably would have had already 2 or 3 more. And the lawsuit's over now, and they're making a television series and a movie. They're coming. So I don't know what the holdup is with Elm Street. I think possibly the remake scared away a lot of people. I don't know how much money that movie lost or whatever, or didn't make, but for whatever reason, people there's just there's so much money to be made. Freddy's one of the most popular slashers of all time. So I think it's just a matter of time before we get another Elm Street movie.
Yeah, hopefully we get it, like you said, before Robert Englund passes away. And
right.
Who knows, But in the meantime, we got a ton of other Nightmare on Elm Street movies that we'll eventually review as well. I just checked; it actually made quite a bit of money.
Did it?
Yeah,
the remake.
The budget was $35 million, and it made $115.
Wow.
So, I mean, I think
even though it was hated,
it's in the eyes of the fans, right, rather than financially. So I don't know what the fuck to hold of it. Maybe they're just looking for the right script. Maybe the Craven estate is actually doing their due diligence and being like, if we're going to do this, it's got to be good. It can't be, Halloween ends.
Right. God, just keep David Gordon Green, please, away from Elm Street.
Oh my
franchise.
God. If he's going to ruin Halloween and The Exorcist, he better not lay a goddamn hand on Nightmare on Elm Street.
Right. Oh, man. Yeah. All right, Steve. Should we rate this sucker?
Yep. Yeah, you go ahead first.
Oh, you're all right. We'll let Steve get his shitty ass grade in last, I guess, just to leave a sour taste in everyone's mouth. All right. I thought this was a good movie. I think if I were to rank, like, I'm not going to rank the whole franchise, but after 1 and 3 and 4, I would probably put this next over Freddy vs. Jason. I would. I think
over Freddy vs. Jason.
I would put this over Freddy vs. Jason. Yeah. I think this is a really unique story, and you don't see this too often. Nowadays you see it more, but back then you didn't really see something like this. It was something different. Craven, took the risk. I think for the most part it worked really well. Would I have liked to see more Freddy in it? Sure. And was the ending the best? No. But overall, I think it's a great Elm Street movie. It's solid for the legacy. It was great to see, all the legacy characters back. So it's one of my favorite Elm Street movies overall. I give it a 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah, I am clearly not at all there. I think Freddy vs. Jason fucking wipes the floor with this one. Like, I love Freddy vs. Jason. It's such a fucking fun movie. So it's not even the same ballpark for me. I rate this one 1.5. So I rated it higher than I did Freddy's Dead, but it's near the bottom of the barrel for me in Nightmare on Elm Street movies. I just did not like this really at all. It had potential, but it didn't. And again, like I said in my Letterboxd review, I'm going to watch this fucking thing in 5 years thinking, you know what, maybe I was rough on it last time. I'll watch it again and probably get disappointed all over again. And it's an endless cycle with me. So there you go.
To be fair, I would probably rate Freddy vs. Jason about the same rating. It's been a while too. I mean, I have to revisit it. My opinion might change after I rewatch it, but there's some goofy shit in that movie that is tough for me to get past, which I'm sure is your opinion on this movie for sure. It doesn't have Dylan in it though, so maybe I would like it better. Dylan definitely sucked in this movie. But all right, yeah. Any last parting thoughts, Steve, before we wrap this up?
No, I'm glad we got the 2 worst Nightmare on Elm Street films out of the way, in my opinion. So, it's only up from here. I think next one will probably be Freddy versus Jason if we do Nightmare on Elm Street in the future.
Yeah,
because
I'd say so.
We were thinking about it for this one, but we decided to go New Nightmare instead. So this one, the reason this came into conversation between like the squad is that we saw it on a lot of, well, maybe not a lot, but a few, what was it, decade lists?
The 90s list.
Yeah, the 90s list. And that shocked me because I think this movie is just like hot garbage. So I wanted to revisit it. So
it's got like a 3.4 on Letterboxd. So
I know
most people agree with me.
I know, and most people that I follow agree with you. But me and spoiler Todd.
Yeah,
also,
Todd hated this.
He hated it more than I did, which I'm kind of sad he kind of couldn't be here this week. But yeah, I'm glad I rewatched it, but it's just not for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we've pretty much almost did the whole Elm Street franchise. We got 1, 2, and that's it. Left 1, 2, and Freddy vs. Jason. No, we've done them all.
We didn't do 5.
We did 3 and 4. Oh yeah, we didn't do 5. Yeah, that's right.
Yes. And because we did the remake. We did.
Yeah, we did 3.
We'll get to them all at some point.
Yeah, I think.
And we got the Craven retrospective, but the Craven is only 1 and this. So
1 and this. I think part 2 would also be a great discussion. Well,
I'd love to do part 2 as well. I like part 2. See, if you don't like part 2, we're reversed because I actually think part 2 is better than people would give it credit for.
We would be reversed, I think. I don't hate part 2, but I definitely dislike it. And that's another one where I'm like, maybe after multiple viewings, I'd like it. So, maybe I'll start to turn around on it eventually, but we'll see. All right. I think that's about it. Also, speaking of part 2, Mark Patton, I know he's been in the hospital. And you can donate to him if you head over to any of his social medias. He's battling AIDS actually, and he was at a hospital stuck in Mexico, and he's trying to get over back to America to better hospitals. So I think at this point, he raised way more than was even expected. So great on the Elm Street fans to come through for him. So thoughts and prayers for Mark Patton as he's dealing with that. And that will wrap it up, ladies and gentlemen, for our new Nightmare episode. Next week, we are reviewing 2023's Skinamarink, which I cannot wait to watch this, honestly. It seems to be a very divisive movie, and I feel like it could be a divisive episode for us too. I think there could be very differing opinions on it. None of us have watched it yet, but what is it, hit in VOD, Steve, or is it already out on VOD?
No, it's actually going to be on Shudder, February 2nd. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
All right, very cool. So if you have Shudder, make sure to check out Skinamarink. Get ready for next week's episode. But in the meantime, you can check us out on any of our social medias, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, The Horror Squad Podcast. You can also email us anytime, The Horror Squad Podcast @gmail.com. And the absolute best way, of course, is our Discord. Just send us a DM through any of our socials, and we'll get you a link over onto the Discord to join the amazing horror community over on our Discord. Yeah, Texas Frightmare Weekend coming up in May. Come join us for all the fun there, as a lot of us will be there for that. It's going to be a great time. And that is it. So we will see you guys next week for Skinamarink. See ya.
Bye.